Good evening and welcome. Tonight we will be continuing our read-through of this book on this day. A History of the World in 366 Days. And we're going to be looking at the month of July. Let's head into just past the middle of this book now. To learn about historical events in July. And I remember to say it at the start this time. If you have a July birthday, first of all, happy birthday. And then let me know what your favorite event on your birthday is. It's always cool to know what's going on in the world on the day you were born. Starting with July 1st, 1903, Tour de France. The first stage of this long-distance bicycle race began in Paris, France. The Tour de France became an annual event and the most famous cycling race in the world. 1867, Canada united. The Constitution Act united the British colonies of Canada, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick into the self-governing Dominion of Canada. The day is now celebrated as Canada Day to commemorate the step toward full independence. 1912, Gender Bender. Popular actor and male impersonator Vesta Tilley appeared on stage dressed as a man during a royal performance at the Palace Theatre in London, UK. The watching Queen Mary was so shocked to see a woman's legs that she covered her face. Also on this day, in 1908, the Morse code SOS officially became a global distress signal and began to be used by ships in danger. 1968, the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons was signed by 62 countries to stop the spread of nuclear weapons. And 1997, after more than a century of British rule, Hong Kong was returned to China. Born this day, two of my favorite women, 1961, Diana Spencer, Princess of Wales, a member of the British royal family. Known as the People's Princess, she supported many charitable causes. Rest in peace, Diana. And 1971, Missy Elliott, Black American rapper. One of the most successful female rappers, she is best known for her hit singles such as Get Your Freak On and Work It. Next is July 2nd, 2005, Live 8. A series of concerts called Live 8 was broadcast on 182 television networks and 2,000 radio stations, with about 1,000 musicians performing live in cities across the world. They performed in support of campaigns to increase government aid from rich nations to poor nations. You know what's funny? I just found an old diary, like a couple weeks ago I found it, and I was writing about how I was watching Live 8 in one of the entries. How cool is that? 1835, the Amistad Revolt. Led by Sangbe Pia, also called Joseph Cinque, a group of 53 enslaved Africans killed their Spanish captors on the ship Amistad. They were captured and tried by the U.S., but later allowed to return to their homeland. 1900, first Zeppelin flight. German inventor Ferdinand von Zeppelin flew his airship Zeppelin LZ-1 over Lake Constance, Germany. It was the first flight of a rigid airship and covered more than 3 miles in about 18 minutes. Look at that Zeppelin. Also on this day in 1823, residents of Brazil's Bahia province celebrated independence from Portuguese colonizers. 1937, U.S. aviator Amelia Earhart went missing while flying over the Pacific Ocean in her attempt to become the first woman to fly around the globe. 1964, Following decades of mass protests, U.S. President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act outlawing racial discrimination. And born this day in 1929, Imelda Marcos, wife of President Ferdinand Marcos of the Philippines. She was notorious for her lavish spending, even as most of the country struggled with poverty. And now her son is president. Interesting. July 3rd, 1987, across the ocean. British billionaire Richard Branson and Swedish pilot Per Lindström set a world record when they became the first people to cross the Atlantic Ocean in a hot air balloon. They landed in Limavady, Northern Ireland, having flown 3,074 miles from Maine. 1938, fastest steam engine. The British steam engine Mallard reached a speed of 126 miles per hour near Grantham, UK, setting a world speed record for steam locomotives that remains unbroken. Probably because we don't really have steam locomotives like that. Oh well. 2004 Magic Trick. Led by American magician Monty Witt, 129 magicians formed the world's longest linking ring chain. They joined together 534 steel rings at a convention of the International Brotherhood of Magicians in Cleveland, Ohio. Also on this day, in 1863, the Union Army achieved its first major victory over Confederate forces at the Battle of Gettysburg, turning the tide in the U.S. Civil War. 1886, engineer Carl Benz drove his three-wheeled motor wagon, the world's first automobile, through the streets of Mannheim in Germany. 1928, shades of red, blue, and green came alive on screen when Scottish inventor John Logie Baird demonstrated the first color TV in 1928. That's wild. And born this day in 1962, Tom Cruise, U.S. actor, one of the most successful movie stars of all time. He has played the lead role in more than 40 films, including blockbuster action movies such as Top Gun and the Mission Impossible series. Not really a fan of Tom Cruise, but Top Gun is a great movie. Next is July 4th. 10:54, dazzling explosion. Astronomers in China observed an exploding star, or supernova, that remained visible for 2 years in the constellation Taurus. It left behind a cloud of debris now known as the Crab Nebula. 1956, record rainfall. The world record for the largest rainfall in a single minute was recorded in Unionville, Maryland. During a storm that flooded homes, flattened crops, and disrupted telephone lines, 1.23 inches of rain fell in just 60 seconds. My goodness. And in 1776, Independence Day. After years of Revolutionary War, 13 British colonies in North America adopted the Declaration of Independence, a document that announced their separation from Great Britain and named them the United States of America. Also on this day, in 1187, Muslim forces regained control of Jerusalem by defeating the Christian Crusader army at the Battle of Hattin in the Middle East. 1959, Ecuador made the Galapagos Islands its first national park, 100 years after the publication of Charles Darwin's book on the Origin of Species, which was partly inspired by his visit to the islands. In 1997, the Sojourner rover landed on Mars and spent 83 days exploring the red planet. And born this day in 1868, Henrietta Swan Leavitt, U.S. astronomer. She discovered a way to measure the distance between Earth and various galaxies. Next is July 5th. 1687, Laws of Motion. English scientist Isaac Newton's Mathematical Principles of Natural Philosophy was published in Latin. Legend has it that a falling apple inspired the scientist to study how things move and the forces affecting them. 2009, Treasure Trove. The largest ever hoard of Anglo-Saxon treasure was discovered in a field in Staffordshire, UK, by metal detector enthusiast Terry Herbert. The find included more than 11 pounds of gold and thousands of jewels. Is that Sutton Hoo? Is that what that is? Maybe. 1943, Clash of Tanks. Nearly 8,000 tanks were used by German and Soviet forces at the Battle of Kursk in Western Soviet Union. Despite heavy losses, the Soviets crushed their opponents. Also on this day, in 1948, the UK government launched the National Health Service, or NHS, to offer free health care to its population. 1950, Israel passed the Law of Return, allowing every Jewish person to settle in the country and become a citizen. And 1994, Amazon was founded by Jeff Bezos out of his garage in Bellevue, Washington. It is now one of the world's largest companies. And born this day, 1968, my old boss, Susan Wojcicki, former CEO of YouTube, one of the most powerful women in the technology industry. She was part of Google's founding team. In 1996, Dolly the sheep, the world's first cloned mammal. She was born at an institute in Scotland and was named after U.S. singer Dolly Parton. If you watch Pamela ASMR, you know that they named her after Dolly Parton because they took it from a breast cell from a sheep. Next is July 6th. 2019, Ancient Tombs of Japan. The Kofun Tombs of Japan were declared a World Heritage Site by the United Nations. These large burial mounds were built more than 1,300 years ago and take various forms, including keyhole shapes, squares, and circles. So cool. 1917, Lawrence of Arabia. When the Arabs revolted against Turkish rulers in the Middle East, British intelligence officer T.E. Lawrence became their close ally and helped them capture the port of Aqaba, from where they received British aid. And 2016, gotta catch 'em all. The launch of Pokemon Go, a real-world mobile game, had people across the world hunting fictional Pokemon creatures using their mobile phones. Now I have a story of this because I'm part of this story. I was a beta tester for Pokemon Go. I had the game about a month and a half before launch. And it was great. It was very different from the finished product, but it was great. And I was playing it on July 5th at about 1 p.m. My game just stopped working and I went, uh-oh, it launched. And sure enough, it did. I'm sure it says July 6th because that would have been like, I guess, UK time. I don't know, but it was definitely July 5th. I'll never forget it. Where my game was going fine 1 minute and the next, it completely crashed and I couldn't open it for hours because everyone was downloading it. Very exciting. I'm a part of history. I was a beta tester. Also on this day in 640, the Battle of Heliopolis in Egypt ended Roman rule and marked the beginning of Muslim rule. In 1942, to escape the Nazis, Jewish diarist Anne Frank and her family went into hiding in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. In 1964, the movie A Hard Day's Night was released. It was the first film starring British rock band The Beatles, and their best movie in my opinion. Born this day in 1907, Frida Kahlo, Mexican painter. She is best known for the colorful self-portraits that she painted after getting injured in a bus accident. Next is July 7th. 1978, tennis legend. Czech-American tennis player Martina Navratilova won the first of her 9 Wimbledon singles titles, a record that still stands. She reached the finals 12 times and achieved 6 consecutive wins from 1982 to 1987. 1881, Pinocchio. Italian author Carlo Collodi's classic about a naughty wooden puppet first appeared as a series of stories in the Italian magazine Giornale per i Bambini. The stories are later collected and published as The Adventures of Pinocchio in 1883. In 1928, first sliced bread. Customers were surprised when a bakery in Chillicothe, Missouri, began selling the world's first pre-sliced bread. It was marketed as the greatest forward step in the baking industry since bread was wrapped. I like how we say it's the best thing since sliced bread, and before sliced bread they said the best thing since wrapped bread. I wonder what they said before that. Also on this day in 1911, the first international treaty for wildlife conservation, the North Pacific Fur Seal Convention, was signed. It aimed to stop open water seal hunting. 1950, the implementation of the Population Registration Act, which classified people according to race, set off racial tensions in South Africa. In 2005, terrorists detonated explosives on public transportation in London, UK, during the morning rush hour, killing 52 people. And born this day in 1980, Michelle Kwan, U.S. figure skater. She has won 2 Olympic medals, 5 World Figure Skating Championships, and 9 U.S. Figure Skating Championships. And 1981, Mahendra Singh Dhoni, Indian cricketer. A great batsman and wicket-keeper, he captained India to victory in the 2011 One-Day World Cup. Wicket-keeper is kind of a good trigger word. Wicket-keeper, wicket-keeper. Next is July 8th. 1853, mission to Japan. With a fleet of 4 ships, U.S. Navy officer Matthew Perry sailed into the harbor of Uraga, Japan, hoping to force the nation to open to U.S. trade after more than 200 years in isolation. 1817, roller coaster. The world's first roller coaster opened in an amusement park in Paris, France. The Promenade Aérienne featured wheeled carts that hurtled down curving tracks at up to 40 miles per hour. And 1996, Girl Power. The Spice Girls, an all-female British pop group, released their smash hit single Wannabe. The song won over young fans across the world with its emphasis on strong friendships between women. Also on this day, in 1497, Portuguese explorer Vasco da Gama set sail with a fleet of 4 ships on the world's first sea voyage from Europe to India. 1775, British colonies in North America signed the Olive Branch Petition in an attempt to avoid war with Great Britain. The petition was rejected by the British king and war followed. In 1947, the U.S. military reported the discovery of a mysterious flying disc near Roswell, New Mexico, sparking decades of conspiracy theories about alien spacecraft. Born this day in 1593, Artemisia Gentileschi, Italian painter. Among the most successful women painters of the 17th century, she became famous for her bold, colorful, and realistic paintings of women from the Bible. And next is July 9th, 1922, swimming champion. Before finding fame playing the character of Tarzan in Hollywood films, U.S. swimming champion Johnny Weissmuller made history by finishing a 100-meter freestyle race in less than a minute in California. 1887, first Wimbledon. The world's first official lawn tennis tournament began in Wimbledon, UK. British sportsperson Spencer Gore beat 21 other amateur players to win the first gentlemen's singles title 10 days later. And 1958, mega tsunami. A 7.8 magnitude earthquake caused a massive rock slide in Lituya Bay in Alaska. The displaced seawater formed into a series of giant waves, some as tall as 1,720 feet, that struck land. Also on this day in 1981, the famous video game character Mario first appeared in the Japanese video game Donkey Kong. If you're born July 9th, you share a birthday with Mario. And 1982, Michael Fagan successfully dodged the high security measures in place at London's Buckingham Palace and broke in. He found his way to the Queen's bedroom before being discovered and arrested shortly afterward. Born this day in 1935, Heidi Mercedes Sosa, Argentinian folk singer. She sang songs in support of oppressed people. And 1956, Tom Hanks, U.S. actor and director. He has starred in more than 90 films and voiced the character of Woody in the Toy Story films. Love Tom Hanks. Next is July 10th. 2018, first giant dinosaur. 200-million-year-old fossils of Ingentia prima, the earliest known giant dinosaur, was found in Argentina. At 33 feet long and weighing 10 tons, this species was about 3 times larger than other dinosaurs alive at that time. The first giant dinosaur was discovered 2018. That's pretty crazy. See, dinosaurs are big, right? That's, wow, okay, anyway. 1943, heroic hound. When his platoon came under fire in Sicily, Italy during World War II, U.S. Army dog Chips charged toward and attacked the Italian soldiers firing machine guns, forcing them to surrender. Chips was awarded many medals for the defense of his platoon. And 1940, the Battle of Britain begins. One of the most famous air battles of World War II began when the Luftwaffe, or German Air Force, invaded the skies over Britain. They were defeated by the British Royal Air Force, or the RAF. Also on this day in 1913, in the Mojave Desert's Death Valley in California, the hottest ever temperature of 134 degrees Fahrenheit was recorded. 1962, the world's first communications satellite, Telstar, was launched into space by NASA. And also in 1962, in the US, a patent was filed for a plastic bag with handles. The invention soon replaced paper bags worldwide. And born this day in 1891, Edith Quimby, US medical researcher and physicist. She helped develop radioactive techniques to detect and treat cancer and found ways to limit patients' side effects. And 1995, Ada Hegerberg, Norwegian soccer player. She won the UEFA Best Women's Player in Europe Award in 2016. Next is July 11th. 1405, Treasure Voyage. Chinese Admiral Zhang He, with his fleet of 317 ships, received the command to set sail on his first voyage of exploration to Southeast Asia and India in search of treasure. 1897, Arctic Tragedy. Swedish explorer S.A. André and 2 companions set off from Norway in a disastrous attempt to reach the North Pole by hot air balloon. They disappeared, and the balloon was not found until 33 years later. 1899, founding Fiat. A group of investors, including Italian entrepreneur Giovanni Agnelli, founded Fiat, or the, Fabbrica Italiana Automobili Torino in Turin, Italy. Under Agnelli's leadership, Fiat became the largest manufacturer of cars in the country. Also on this day in 1801, French astronomer Jean-Louis Pont found the first of the 37 comets discovered by him. 1914, U.S. baseball legend Babe Ruth made his debut in the Major League as a pitcher. And 2018, scientists reported finding 21 million-year-old stone tools in China, suggesting that humans left Africa much earlier than assumed. And born this day in 1923, Tun Tun, Indian comedian and singer. The first female comedian in Bollywood, she appeared in more than 100 movies. And 1957, Michael Rose, Jamaican musician. He was lead singer of the reggae group Black Uhuru, who in 1985 won the first ever Grammy Award for Best Reggae Album. Next is July 12th. 1770, Spinning Jenny. James Hargreaves of Lancashire, UK, patented the spinning jenny, a machine that turns raw cotton fiber into thread for weaving. The invention helped trigger Britain's Industrial Revolution. And 1493, the Nuremberg Chronicle. The Nuremberg Chronicle by German historian Hartmann Schedel was published. One of the most richly illustrated books of the 15th century, it chronicled the history of the Christian world. Yeah, that's beautiful, isn't it? Really colorful. Also on this day, in 1576, the Mughal Empire seized control of Bengal in the Indian subcontinent after defeating Sultan Daud Khan Karani at the Battle of Rajmahal. 1776, British explorer James Cook set sail on an attempt to find the Northwest Passage, a sea route through the Arctic Ocean. He was killed while visiting Hawaii. 1863, the British colonial army invaded indigenous Maori land at Waikato, New Zealand. 1971, the tricolored Australian Aboriginal flag was flown for the first time in Adelaide, Australia, on National Aborigines Day. And born this day in 1997, Malala Yousafzai, Pakistani activist. She survived an assassination attempt after campaigning for girls' rights to education. She is the youngest recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. Next is July 13th, 1985, Live Aid concert. A 16-hour charity concert was held in Wembley Stadium in London, UK. Broadcast globally, it raised an estimated £150 million for famine relief in Ethiopia. 2013, Black Lives Matter. Outraged by the release of George Zimmerman, who had killed unarmed black teenager Trayvon Martin, U.S. activist Alicia Garza posted a message on Facebook with the hashtag Black Lives Matter. It became a rallying cry for racial justice. And 1871, First Cat Show. About 170 cats, including Siamese, African, and French breeds, were exhibited at the Crystal Palace in London, UK. The world's first cat show was a thundering success with more than 20,000 visitors. Also on this day in 1772, British explorer James Cook set sail. He was busy in July. Set sail in a fruitless attempt to discover a vast continent thought to cover much of Earth's southern hemisphere. 1930, the first FIFA World Cup competition began in Montevideo, Uruguay. And 1977, New York City suffered one of its worst blackouts after lightning struck its power grid. In the darkness, looters ransacked stores. Born this day in 1942, Harrison Ford, U.S. actor. He's best known for playing Han Solo in Star Wars and Indiana Jones in Raiders of the Lost Ark, two iconic film characters. And 1944, Erno Rubik, Hungarian inventor. Obsessed with puzzles since childhood, he created the Rubik's Cube in 1974. Next is July 14th, 1712, steam engine. The Newcomen engine, one of the first commercially successful steam engines, was put to work pumping water out of the mines in Tipton, UK. It helped pave the way for Britain's Industrial Revolution. 1881, Billy the Kid. Notorious American Wild West gunfighter Billy the Kid, or Henry McCarty, was shot and killed at the age of 21 by law officer Patrick Floyd Garrett. The outlaw had committed at least 9 murders. And 1789, the storming of the Bastille. Hundreds of angry French citizens attacked the Bastille, a prison and fortress in Paris. The battle kick-started the French Revolution, and its anniversary is now celebrated as Bastille Day. Also on this day in 1957, after winning the 1957 election in her constituency, Rauya Ataya joined Egypt's National Assembly to become the first female member of parliament in the Arab world. 2011. 5 days after becoming an independent country, South Sudan became the 193rd member of the United Nations. And 2012, the first International Non-Binary Peoples' Day was celebrated for individuals who do not identify as either male or female. And born this day, 1917, Ben Nwanwu, Nigerian painter and sculptor. Known for his modernist style, Nwanwu became one of the most influential African artists of the 20th century. And 1941, Maulana Karenga, Black American activist. He created the week-long celebration Kwanzaa to honor African heritage in the U.S. Next we have July 15th, 1890, table tennis. David Foster, a British inventor, filed a patent for the game of table tennis. His version featured a rubber ball, rackets with strings, and a small wooden perimeter fence. 1799, Code Breaker. The Rosetta Stone, a rock carved with the same inscription in 3 different ancient languages, was discovered near Rashid, Egypt. It helped scholars decipher the hieroglyphic writing used in ancient Egypt. And 1858, the Great Stink. A bill was passed to clean out the waste dumped in the Thames River in London, UK, to rid the city of the great stink it caused. This led to an improved sewer system. Also on this day, in 1099 and in 1244, Christian forces captured the city of Jerusalem in the Holy Land in 1099, bringing the First Crusade to an end. Exactly 145 years later to the day, the Crusaders lost Jerusalem to a Muslim army in 1244. I wonder if that was intentional or just like a huge coincidence. I don't know. 1965, the Mariner 4 spacecraft flew as close as 6,118 miles to Mars. Its photos of the red planet are the first taken from space of a planet other than Earth. And in 2010, Argentina became the first South American country to legalize same-sex marriages. And born this day in 1606, Rembrandt, Dutch painter. He was a master of different styles and subjects, such as portraits, including his own, and landscapes. And in 1914, Prince Birabongse Banudej, Prince Birabongse Banudej, the Thai prince, sailor, pilot, and racing driver, He was the first Southeast Asian driver to compete in Formula One racing. July 16th, 1935. 16th. Pay for parking. Invented by U.S. publisher Carl C. McGee, the world's first parking meter, called the Park-O-Meter No. 1, was installed in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. More than 140 meters were set up in the U.S. by the 1940s. 1945 nuclear test. The world's first nuclear bomb was detonated in the desert in New Mexico. Codenamed Trinity, this test marked the beginning of the atomic age. In 2017, all-time great. Swiss tennis player Roger Federer defeated Croatian Marin Cilic in 3 straight sets to claim his 8th Wimbledon men's singles title, setting a new record. Also on this day in 622, the start date of the Islamic calendar. It marks the first new moon after Prophet Muhammad moved to Medina. 1809, led by Pedro Murillo, the citizens of La Paz, Bolivia, revolted against their Spanish rulers. And 1911, Italian-Argentine women's rights activist Giulietta Lenteri used a legal technicality to become the first woman in South America to vote. Born this day in 1911, Ginger Rogers, U.S. actor, dancer, and singer. She starred in more than 70 Hollywood movies, winning an Oscar for Best Actress for Kitty Foyle. Next is July 17th. And in 1955, Disneyland opens. Built under the supervision of Walt Disney, the Disneyland theme park in California opened for the first time. The park now welcomes millions of visitors every year. And in 1717, Floating Orchestra. The water music by German-born composer Georg Friedrich Handel was performed for the first time at a concert that took place on a barge on the Thames River in Britain. King George I, who watched from another boat, asked for the music to be replayed multiple times. Also on this day, in 709 BCE, the first confirmed total solar eclipse to be recorded in history was seen by Chinese astronomers, according to the ancient text Lu Shi Chong Qi. Okay, I said that wrong for sure. 1936. An uprising by nationalist rebels opposed to Spain's left-wing government triggered the start of the Spanish Civil War, which would last until 1939. And born this day in 1954, Angela Merkel, German politician. She became Germany's first female chancellor, which is their head of government in Germany, in 2005, and was re-elected in 2009, 2013, and 2018. Next is July 18th. 64 CE, the Great Fire of Rome. A fire broke out in a shop near Rome's Circus Maximus, a huge chariot racing stadium. Fanned by strong winds, the blaze spread quickly and destroyed nearly 2/3 of the city within 9 days. 1863 Civil War hero. Black American soldier William Harvey Carney took part in the Battle of Fort Wagner in the U.S. Civil War. He would later receive the Medal of Honor, the U.S.'s most prestigious military award for his bravery. And in 1976, Perfect 10. Romanian gymnast Nadia Comaneci scored the first perfect 10 in Olympic gymnastics after a flawless routine on the uneven bars at the Montreal Olympics. Unable to display a 10, the scoreboard showed 1.00 instead. Also on this day, in 1892, Ukrainian-French microbiologist Valdemar Hafkina injected himself with the first effective human cholera vaccine, which he had developed at the Pasteur Institute in Paris, France. And in 2005, Brazilian windsurfers Flavio Jardim and Diogo Guerreiro completed their 5,045-mile journey along the coast of Brazil, setting a world record for the longest windsurfing journey. Wow, that's a long way to windsurf. And born this day, 1918, Nelson Mandela, South African freedom fighter and political leader. A member of the African National Congress, he fought against racial segregation. He served as the country's first black president from 1994 to 1999. Next is July 19th, 1903 cycling champ. With a lead of 3 hours, French cyclist Maurice Guérin beat 60 competitors to win the first Tour de France. Only 21 riders managed to complete the 19-day race across France. Look there, he's wearing yellow. 1900 Paris Metro. The first line of the Paris Metro subway system was opened to the public during the Summer Olympics in Paris, France. The line linked Port-Maillot in the west of the city with Port-Vincent in the east. 1983 Brain in 3D. U.S. Dr. Michael W. Vanier and his team published a series of scans created using computed tomography, or CT. These scans were put together to create the first three-dimensional picture of the inside of a person's head. Also on this day, in 1848, the first women's rights convention was held at Seneca Falls, New York. 1912, after a 441-pound meteorite exploded in the sky above Holbrook, Arizona, nearly 16,000 fragments rained down on the city. And in 2019, Kenya unveiled Africa's largest wind power plant on the shores of Lake Turkana. And born this day, 1965, Evelyn Glennie, Scottish percussionist. Almost completely deaf, she has trained herself to feel music with other parts of her body. Next is July 20th, 1969, moon landing. U.S. astronaut Neil Armstrong became the first human to walk on the moon, while 500 million people back on Earth watched him live on television. He was soon joined by fellow U.S. astronaut Buzz Aldrin, which is him right there. 1985, long-lost treasure. After searching for 15 years, U.S. explorer Mel Fisher located the 17th century Spanish ship Nuestra Señora de Achota off the coast of Florida. On board were tons of precious gold, silver, and emeralds. And 2018, stunts on wheels. U.S. athlete Aaron Fotheringham set 3 huge wheelchair stunt world records for the longest ramp jump, the tallest quarter pipe drop-in, and the highest hand plant at the Woodward West Summer Camp in California. That's amazing. Also on this day in 1960, Sri Lankan politician Sirimavo Bandaranaike became the world's first female prime minister. 1968, about 1,000 disabled athletes participated in the first Special Olympics in Chicago, Illinois. And 1976, a broken knee couldn't stop Japanese gymnast Fujimoto Shun from winning a gold medal at the Montreal Olympics. Man, that must have been a wild time for gymnastics at that Olympics. Not only was Nadia, but this dude won gold with a broken knee. Wow. And born this day in 1822, Gregor Mendel, Austrian scientist. He studied how physical traits are passed on from parents to children by carrying out experiments using pea plants. 1919, Edmund Hillary, New Zealand mountaineer. He was the first person to reach the top of Mount Everest and both the North and South Poles. Wow. If only he could have gone to Challenger Deep, he would have been on the highest, lowest, northern, and southern district. Next is July 21st, 1904. World's longest railroad. The Trans-Siberian Railway was completed after more than 10 years of construction. It runs for 5,772 miles between the Russian cities of Moscow in the west and Vladivostok in the east. 2017 sumo champ Hakuho Sho beat Takayasu Akira in Nagoya, Japan, winning his 1048th sumo match, and setting the record for most career wins in the sport. I believe it. 2012 Muscle Power. U.S. adventurer Erden Eruch returned to Bodega Bay, California, after completing the first solo trip around the globe to be achieved using only human muscle power. Over 5 years of travel, he had covered 41,196 miles by cycling, walking, canoeing, kayaking, and rowing. That's incredible. Also on this day in 1865, Wild Bill Hickok shot down Davis Tutt in a gunfight in Springfield, Missouri that came to be known as the first Wild West Showdown. 1919, Azerbaijan became the first Muslim country to grant women aged 20 and above the right to vote. And 1983, Soviet research station Vostok in Antarctica noted a ground temperature of negative 128.6 degrees Fahrenheit, the lowest ever recorded on Earth. And born this day in 1972, Catherine Nyambura Ndereba, Kenyan athlete. A legendary long-distance runner, she has won the Boston Marathon 4 times and the Chicago and World Championship Marathons twice. Next is July 22nd, 1802, unifying Vietnam. Emperor Jialong captured the northern city of Hanoi in Vietnam, bringing the entire country under his rule. He established the Nguyen dynasty, the last in Vietnamese history. 2009 long eclipse. The longest solar eclipse to be seen in the first 2 decades of the 21st century lasted for 6 minutes and 39 seconds. It was visible to millions of people across Asia. And 1933 global flight. The first solo flight around the world was completed when U.S. aviator Wiley Post landed in New York City after flying for 7 days, 18 hours, and 49 minutes. His journey had taken him over 15,596 miles. Also on this day, in 1342, continuous rain caused the banks of several European rivers, including the Danube and Rhine, to burst. The St. Mary Magdalene's flood, as it came to be known, was the worst ever recorded in Central Europe. 1997, the first issue of Japanese manga One Piece was published. The series went on to sell more than 450 million copies, and I'm pretty sure it's still ongoing, right? It started in 97. That's crazy. And in 2015, the oldest pieces of a copy of the Quran, the religious book of Islam, were dated by radiocarbon testing as about 1,370 years old. And born this day in 1992, Selena Gomez, U.S. singer and actor. She appeared on Disney TV shows as a child star before developing her movie career. She has also enjoyed chart success with her band and as a solo artist. Next is July 23rd, 2010, One Direction. After 5 teenagers appeared separately on UK talent show The X Factor, They were brought together as boy band One Direction by Judge Simon Cowell. They quickly became one of the world's most popular pop groups. 1966, Full Speed Ahead. U.S. former military pilot Don Wetzel tested the rocket-powered Black Beetle train. Speeding along a flat, straight track, it reached a top speed of 183 miles per hour, an unbeaten U.S. railroad record. And in 2012, cycling record. The first woman to set a record for cycling around the globe, British-German endurance athlete Juliana Buhring began her journey in Naples, Italy. She finished 152 days later after traveling more than 18,000 miles on a bicycle. Wow. Also on this day, in 1952, the almost 150-year reign of the Muhammad Ali dynasty in Egypt ended when the army overthrew King Farouk and established a republic. 1980, Vietnamese astronaut Pham Thuan became the first non-Soviet Asian to go into space on board Soviet spacecraft Soyuz 37. In 2015, NASA scientists announced the discovery of Kepler 452b, an Earth-like planet in the habitable zone of a sun-like star. And born this day in 1931 is Te Atairangiko, Maori Queen. Her 40-year-old rule made her the longest reigning Maori monarch. In 1989, Daniel Radcliffe, British actor. He starred as Harry Potter in the film adaptations of J.K. Rowling's novels. Next is July 24th. 2019 global warming. Scientific studies revealed that although temperatures on Earth had risen and fallen over the past 2,000 years, the average global temperatures peaked in the 20th century due to human activities. And in 1911, Inca City. In the Andes Mountains of Peru, U.S. archaeologist Hiram Bingham was led to Machu Picchu, becoming the first Westerner to see the ruins of this 15th century Inca city. Also on this day, in 1847, led by Brigham Young, a group of 148 Mormons arrived in the Great Salt Lake Valley in Utah. There they founded Salt Lake City. 1943, more than 700 British RAF bombers began 8 days of air raids on Hamburg, Germany during World War II. And in 1944, about 300 Mexican soldiers formed a U.S. military squadron called the Aztec Eagles. They went on to fight against Japan on the Pacific Front in World War II. And born this day in 1966, Aminatu Ali Ahmed Haidar, Moroccan human rights activist. She advocates for the independence of Western Sahara from Morocco. And another one of my favorite people ever, 1969, Jennifer Lopez, U.S. singer and actor. She is the best-selling pop artist and one of the highest-earning entertainers in the U.S. Following her career since she was on In Living Color when I was like 5 years old. I loved her. July 25th, 2006, Toumani Diabaté. The renowned Malian musician Toumani Diabaté, my goodness, Diabaté released his famous album Boulevard de l'Indépendance. He was one of the first artists to record music with a kora, a West African stringed instrument resembling a lute. Look at this thing, it's gigantic. 1909, Winning Flight. In an achievement that won him 1,000 pounds, French aviator Louis Blériot became the first person to fly across the English Channel. He rose to fame as one of the leading pilots of the era. In 1984, IVF baby. Louise Brown was born in the UK. She was the world's first baby conceived by in vitro fertilization, or IVF, a type of fertilization that takes place outside a woman's body. Also on this day in 1814, at the Battle of Niagara Falls in modern-day Ontario, Canada, Canadian and British troops defended their territory against U.S. forces. 1984, cosmonaut Svetlana Savitskaya became the first woman to perform a spacewalk while working on the Soviet Union's Salyut 7 space station. Born this day in 1920, Rosalind Franklin, British scientist. She made huge contributions to the discovery of the double helix structure of DNA. In 1967, Matt LeBlanc, U.S. actor. He is best known for playing Joey Tribbiani in the popular TV show Friends. Next is July 26th, 2016 presidential candidate. At the Democratic National Convention in Philadelphia, Hillary Clinton became the first ever female U.S. presidential nominee from a major political party. 1509, Rise of Vijayanagara. Krishna Devaraya, who's on the left it says, became the ruler of the Vijayanagara Empire in what is now southern India. He expanded his empire through conquest and also promoted the arts. 2012, the Congo Basin. As part of a UN-led project, 10 countries across Central Africa agreed to monitor the rainforests of the Congo Basin in order to reduce illegal logging, mining, and construction in the region. Also on this day in 1920, at 72, Swedish shooter Oscar Swan won silver at the Antwerp Olympics in Belgium, becoming the oldest Olympic medalist in history. In 1943, dense smog covered Los Angeles. Some feared a chemical attack by Japan, but the main cause was identified as traffic fumes. Born this day in 1964, Sandra Bullock, U.S. actor. She has starred in many popular Hollywood movies such as Speed, love that movie, The Blind Side, and Gravity. July 27th is next. 1896, wireless messaging. Italian inventor Guglielmo Marconi, I know Marconi, I never knew his first name, Guglielmo, demonstrated his wireless telegraph in London, UK, sending a Morse code signal from one post office to another located 980 feet away. 1940, Bugs Bunny. The beloved cartoon rabbit first appeared on screen in the animated short film A Wild Hare. Bugs Bunny went on to star in many more cartoons. If you're born this day, you share the birthday with Bugs Bunny. In 1996, beach volleyball. In the women's final of the first Olympic beach volleyball event held in Atlanta, Georgia, Jackie Silva and Sandra Pires beat fellow Brazilians Monica Rodrigues and Adriana Samuel. Also on this day in 1377, following a plague outbreak, the city of Ragusa, which is present-day Dubrovnik, Croatia, introduced the first compulsory quarantine, making people entering the city isolate themselves for 30 days. 1921, Canadian scientists Frederick Banting and Charles Best discovered insulin, the hormone that controls the level of sugar in the blood. It would eventually be used to treat diabetes. And in 1953, North Korea and South Korea signed an armistice agreement that ended the fighting in the Korean War. And born this day in 1923, Masutatsu Oyama, Korean-Japanese martial artist. He fought hundreds of contests and some bare-handed battles with bulls before founding the Kyokushin karate style. Next is July 28th. 1588, the Spanish Armada. The English Navy set 8 of their ships on fire at night and sent them toward the Spanish Armada, a fleet of ships anchored at the harbor in Calais, France. The Spanish panicked and their ships scattered, leading to an easy victory for the English the following day. In 1939, so I guess that other one was not Sutton Hoo, because this is Anglo-Saxon helmet. Archaeologists unearthed the remains of an elaborately decorated helmet from a burial site at Sutton Hoo in Suffolk, UK. This rare Anglo-Saxon object is made of iron and has a cap, a neck guard, a face mask, and cheek shields, which protected the warrior from every angle. In 1917, silent protest. 10,000 people marched silently down New York City's Fifth Avenue in protest against the race-based killings of Black Americans in the U.S. Even back then, Black Lives Matter. Also on this day in 1821, led by Argentinian General José de San Martín, the people of Peru defeated Spanish colonial forces to gain independence. 1914, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, triggering World War I after a Serbian man killed Austria's Archduke Franz Ferdinand. And 1976, a devastating 7.6 magnitude earthquake struck Tangshan, China, destroying most buildings in the city and damaging roads and bridges. Born this day in 1866, Beatrix Potter, British author and illustrator. She created more than 20 children's books featuring animal characters such as Peter Rabbit, big part of my childhood. In 1923, Xia Peisu, Chinese computer scientist. She researched and designed Model 107, the first computer to be built in China. Next is July 29th. There she is. 1981 Fairy Tale Wedding. Surrounded by a massive global media hype, Prince Charles, heir to the British throne, married Diana Spencer, the youngest daughter of a British nobleman, at St. Paul's Cathedral in London, UK. 1836 Arc de Triomphe. French King Louis-Philippe unveiled the Arc de Triomphe, a monument dedicated to the memory of soldiers who had died fighting for France in war. Located in Paris, it's one of the country's most famous landmarks. Also on this day in 1030, King Olaf II Haraldsson of ancient Norway died at the Battle of Stiklestad. He was later declared a saint by the church, and his popularity helped the spread of Christianity in the country. In 1921, politician Adolf Hitler became the leader of the extremist Nazi Party in Germany. The Nazis would eventually take charge of the country in 1933. And born this day in 1959, Sanjay Dutt, Indian actor. He overcame a number of personal challenges to become a famous Bollywood movie star. In 1981, Fernando Alonso, Spanish driver. He was one of the youngest winners of the Formula One World Drivers' Championship and has competed in other motorsports such as rally racing and the Indianapolis 500 as well. Next is July 30th. 2016 Leap of Faith. U.S. daredevil Luke Aikins jumped out of an aircraft at an altitude of 25,000 feet without a parachute over Simi Valley in California. He landed safely in a giant net and walked away with no injuries. Wow. 2011 The Joy of Friendship. The United Nations observed the first International Day of Friendship. It celebrated the importance of close bonds between people, communities, and countries, and raised awareness of how these relationships can help us during hard times. Also on this day in 762, Abbasid ruler Al-Mansur founded Baghdad. In modern-day Iraq, The round city became the thriving capital of his empire. 2009, Japanese astronaut Koichi Wakata returned to Earth in a fresh pair of underpants after wearing his previous pair for a month while on board the International Space Station. He was testing to see whether the specially designed garment would eventually start to smell. Okay. Born this day in 1947, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Austrian-American bodybuilder, actor, and politician. In his varied career, he has won the Mr. Universe title, starred in Hollywood movies, and served as governor of California. And lastly, we have July 31st, 1752, oldest working zoo. Holy Roman Emperor Franz I founded the Vienna Zoo in the grounds of Austria's famous Schönbrunn Palace. It was opened to the public in 1778. 2003, Daredevil Flight. Austrian skydiver Felix Baumgartner became the first person to fly across the English Channel using a carbon wing. He jumped from a plane above Dover, UK, and soared 22 miles before landing safely near Calais, France. In 1971, the first moon drive. U.S. astronauts David Scott and James Irwin from NASA's Apollo 15 mission became the first people to drive a vehicle on the moon when they set off to explore in the four-wheel electric lunar roving vehicle. Also on this day, in 1581, Johann von Schönenberg became the Archbishop of Trier, Germany. He went on to lead one of Europe's biggest witch trials. 1658, Aurangzeb took the throne as the sixth Mughal emperor. During his reign, the Mughal Empire reached its largest size. In 2013, Black American Kimberly Bryant was honored as a White House Champion of Change. She founded Black Girls Code, an organization that teaches computer skills to young girls. And born this day, 1973, Andy McDonald, U.S. skateboarder. He has won the World Cup Skateboarding Series 9 times. And that is the end of that. Boy, that was really exciting because I did it all in one take. Usually this takes many hours for me to film, so that was exciting. I have a lot of throat issue and I have Tourette's, so things kind of hold me back on doing long videos like this, but I did it. Yay. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video relaxing and educational, and I hope that you have a very good